I just want to quickly start and tell you a little bit about myself. I come from film, television, video game scoring. My career started with a show called Battlestar Galactica. I did a little game called God of War. Working on The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, with at least one of these folks up here. But I got this idea about 5 years ago that there was a part of my creativity I wasn't using. And I wanted to write something that came from some inner place. I loved getting stories from other people, but I was also feeling like I had something I wanted to say. And I think the first person up here that I might have vented to was Kyle. Rufus, I want to ask you a question because Kyle and I got our start making art for other people. He was writing for Marvel and DC, and I'm doing Battlestar Galactica. When I think about musical worlds, your voice from your debut record, you create music, you create worlds in people's minds. And I wanted to know, first of all, where your creativity comes from, because you're not given an assignment. So when you got started, where were your sort of inspirations coming from?
Well, I was kind of forced into it as a baby, because both my parents were great musicians. My mother sadly has passed away. Her name was Kate McGarrigle. She was a great folk musician. My dad, Loud and Wainwright, still sings today. And so I had the luxury of being really brought up in that creative space, and especially my mother, who was had a lot of ambition for her and for everybody around her. Just started to really she started me going very, very young. That being said, it is an insatiable hunger that you must have to keep doing it and to really be successful at it. And I was very lucky because I was able to explore that at a very young age. I think certain people, they have that hunger and they have that desire, but they don't quite know what it is,
Yeah.
And then finally, through some creative outlet, they're able to discover that and get going with it. So I was fortunate because I was awoken early. So
Yeah, Matt, do you want to pitch what the book is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically about a being who gets reborn again and again into different lives and different universes, and eventually starts to realize that the universes that they're sort of emerging into every time are starting to self-destruct around them, and they don't know why or how. And it's about their journey to, first of all, figure out why them? Why are they the one who keeps being reborn? Why is this happening to the multiverse? And what does it mean both for existence and for them that everything seems to be ending? And we came up with this construct pretty early on to express how vast the album is. And then it was finding the heart of that story.
That took a year, the next step. I mean, you were like, here's this great idea. And I'm like, great, we're 99% of the way there. To get the 1% more, before you even scripted it, took a year of outline.
Absolutely.
I'm working with actors. You mentioned Lee Pace. But Rufus, I want to ask you, fundamentally, if I had asked you if you wanted to play on an extreme metal song, I suspect you probably just would have said no. Why did you join me on the Singularity?
Well, for one thing, when I'm not a heavy metal artist.
Yes, let's get that out of the way now.
That is not my That's not my usual genre. But that being said, in my early career in the 90s, when I started out, my best friend at the time and someone I lived with when I first moved to LA was this girl named Melissa Oftermauer, who played with Smashing Pumpkins and Hole, and so knew Courtney Love. So they were sort of, and Marilyn Manson. So I would hang out with some of those. I guess they're not really heavy metal, but we're getting into the rock.
It's pretty heavy there.
Yeah, it was pretty heavy. Heavy a lot of stuff. Anyways, but I do have a rock and roll sensibility in there.
Yeah.
And what was great, and I'd often heard this, is that my true love. I mean, I'm a songwriter mainly, but my true love is actually opera. I love to compose operas. I've composed two, And yeah, I mean, I go to the opera all the time, but I was often told that there is actually this link between heavy metal and opera.
I believe that.
Yeah, especially Wagner and, you know, and this kind of, you know, intense, mythic and very dark and powerful sensibility. So I was kind of prepped for it, and it was fun because I was able to kind of use my voice in a more operatic way. In a popular form. So
Yeah.
So thank you.
But hold on, real quick. I want to spin this back on you because I don't
Yeah,
think
right.
we've ever really talked about this for as long as we've worked on this project and known each other. Why did you want to do it this way? Why a comic book? Why chase this immersive storytelling quality that no one's done before?
The truth to that answer is that I did it to. I mean, I don't want to speak hyperbolically, but it was to like almost save my life. If I didn't do it, I was gonna go on some path. I just saw some path forward that is not who I wanted to be. I set a goal for myself when I was a kid. I wanted to do big movies. And I came into this business and I found a lot of success in TV and games, and I started doing movies. And I didn't feel any more satiated. I had this hunger, which is good. The hunger in your 20s is good. In your early 30s, it's good. It can start to devour you. And honestly, it was in 2019, I had Godzilla, King of the Monsters out. Great score, I was really proud of that. And I had, thank you, go Godzilla. And I also had Child's Play out with Mark Hamill. I got to write this great song. And I had 2 movies in the top 10 at the same time. And I had 2 movies out that I was really proud of that were come out just the month before. And I was like, I'm not any happier than I was when I started. What is missing? So I did it because I was realizing, like, I'm just gonna start becoming bitter if I don't. And really, art to me is like, it's like air, it's like oxygen. So I did this because I had to. You used the word scary. I'm gonna be real with you guys. The first day that I woke up to work on the Singularity, I was supposed to be working on God of War Ragnarok. And I was like, I'm gonna put this aside for like a week. I'm just gonna try some stuff. And I started feeling ill. Like I was sick. Like I was like, something seriously wrong. And I was like, I'm gonna throw up. And I was like, this is all in my head. This is all in my head because my body is going, no. You should just do your job, not this other thing. And I was like, no, body, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I need to make me happy. It's so easy to fool ourselves and say, if we're working toward our career all day, every day, then we're working toward what makes us happy. That isn't actually true. There's a lot of alignment where that can be true. So that's why I started the Singularity. I wanted to write a couple of songs that would be fun. That was it. I had no ambitions of being up here at New York Comic Con with you guys. I'd never even dreamed that. But then the songs turned out pretty good. And then my brother, Brendan McCreary, came on, co-writing them with me. Then I sent him to Serge Tankian from System of a Down. And I thought, boy, if he tells me these are bad, I'm going to take it seriously. He loved it. He came on board. And then Scott Ian from Anthrax came on board. Brendan Small from Metalocalypse and Deathclock came on board. And then, that was around the time I met you, Rufus. We met at Sundance. And I had this thing. You were the first person that I didn't know really well. We had met, but I was like, dang, this is outside the box. Why don't we try this? So it just became this thing, and it gets to what Kyle was saying about creativity and collaboration, where that became what I was yearning. I realized that's what I was missing in 2019. As successful as I was at that time, people were bringing me their stories, and I was writing music, and I knew how to do that. But there's a level of collaboration that it's just not needed in that. And part of that is that blank page that I was talking about.
I'm going to go with a practical consideration, is that before any of this happens, you have to put in the time.
Yes.
In the sense that I've found, like, it's interesting because I've worked in several mediums now. I've obviously music, but I also took up drawing again during the pandemic.
Rufus is a brilliant visual artist.
And I did that, and then I've tried my hand at writing as well. They're all very different disciplines, and they all require their own peculiarities. And so you have to. So I think for each of them, the main thing is like just clock your hours in the sense like I'm just going to do this as much as I can, and then it starts to. It's like a muscle, and it starts to really work and become its own entity. So I think at the beginning it is always hard, and it might seem impossible, but it's really just the amount of time that you do it, you do get better. And I mean, unless you're not meant to do that, which does happen. Some people it doesn't pan out. But if it's gonna pan out, you just have to put the time in, and then it will serve you back,
What about you, Ramón?
The blank page?
Which you must face on a daily basis.
On a daily basis, yeah. I mean, it's interesting, like you were talking about working with clients and these triggers that, whether it's a TV show, a movie, or whatever it might be. That's easy. That's like you're giving a starting point by whoever you're collaborating with, which is wonderful. I've been super lucky, whether it's musicians such as yourself, other writers, other artists. I've collaborated with the top tier people in my industry. But when doing my own thing, and I feel like I'm just echoing what Kyle said here, but we are filters for our lives. And I think as an artist, I constantly have stories revolving around in my head. And when the time is right in a certain point in my life, a certain story comes out. Like I have graphic novels, books that I've been working on for years. Some come out quickly, other ones get shelved, and then 3 years later I pull it back off, dust it off, and get back into it. Like I feel like whatever moment you are in your life is a catalyst for the kind of story you want to tell. And if we're lucky, we get to do that throughout our lives. And it was funny listening to what you were saying about working on a lot of the corporate work that you do. I felt very similar, and I think a lot of artists do. We get sucked down this path of, well, I got to pay the bills, mortgage, life, family, all this stuff, and you have a client that comes up to you and says, hey, we'll pay you this much to create this, and you're like, well, that's great, okay. But then that little part of you dies inside that wants to create your own thing, and if you don't nourish that voice, then you do become a shell of your former self, I think. And that's where I hit 50 last year, and I've been super lucky. I've worked with DC, Marvel, like every company that's here, I've probably worked for at one point. And I've done work I'm super proud of, but none of it's fed me. And now I'm on that journey where I'm taking all these old projects, different things I started and stopped, and actually giving them time so I can not die as an artist, basically.
Yeah, that I resonate with all of that. And you also brought up another interesting thing. Don't throw anything out.
No.
Don't throw anything out. So many things on the Singularity were born from ideas that I started, and then it's just not its time. There's a track on there called Escape from the Machines, and it opens with a recording from a cassette tape 4-track recorder from 1995 when I was 15 years old. Oh, wow. And it's my high school demo that I made of this song, and it's my friend Ryan playing this guitar riff. He's actually become a Grammy-winning producer of hip-hop music named Malay, no surprise there, but he and I were hanging out in his bedroom in Bellingham, Washington when we were kids. And then in the Singularity version, suddenly you hear Slash come in, picking up that same guitar riff that was gnawing at me for 30 years. I could never get it right, but I also never threw it out.
Get out of your head. So I want to know what you guys do when you hit that point, when you have to get out of your head, to step away from the project.
What do you do, Matt, when you're writing?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for walks. I feel like I probably weird some people out in my neighborhood walking around at 1 a.m. at night, just stalking the streets in my head. But that's mostly writing. There's transcribing at the end of the process when you sit down in front of the word processor and you get it down, but most of it's just getting out into the world.
I call friends. I have certain friends. I've called Bear before. You call people you trust and you talk through stuff, and oftentimes you find answers, it's not even them telling you an answer or giving you an idea, it's just articulating it and getting it out of your head. And longhand in notebooks is a big thing for me. There's something about actually physically writing that unlocks some aspects of my brain where I'm not judging, and it's stream of conscious, and then it's things
What
like
about
that.
you, Rufus? What do you do when you're stuck creatively?
Well, it's ended now, but for a few years, I had the amazing good fortune, or my husband and I had the great fortune of having I'd say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old, like that era, from 5 to 9.
A kid, yeah.
Or 10, and just some of the things that came out of their mouth was just so much more advanced and more interesting. So I kind of would pirate things from children. That kind of.
So have a baby. That's the,
Yes. Ramón, what about you?
A bit about everything that was set up here. I run a studio with 30 artists, and I don't call someone. I just go into another room, we chat, and like as Kyle said, sometimes it's just them unlocking something in your brain, a trigger or whatever it might be. Or sometimes it's just leaving the studio, going for a walk, grabbing an ice cream or a coffee, and talking to a complete stranger, and hopefully they're not scared and run away.